Welcome to the city of frost and fire. You're going to discover the authentic stories of the extraordinary people that define our north of normal metro. I'm Conrad Fargo, and this is the Fargo Five. We've got Kim. Oh, I didn't ask you before we got on. Kim Baird? Baird. Kim Baird. Oh, and if I turn on your mic, that helps. The president of the Fiber Arts Festival. Welcome, Kim.
Thank you.
So I asked you, it was kind of a joke. I said, so that's your full-time job being the president? And you laughed. You said you're retired.
Well, that's why I can do the president of the Fiber Arts Festival.
Yes. It's a lot of work. I don't, and we have people on from nonprofit boards and stuff often. And I don't think people realize just how much work it is to be in charge of those kinds of things.
Yeah. The buck has to stop somewhere. So you get the phone calls about, fix this, do that.
How long have you been retired?
Quite a while, actually. I did some teaching for a while. When I first moved here, I was a teacher. But, substitute teaching is not as satisfying as having your own class. So I gave that up and went into retail. I had a shop that sold fabric for quilters.
Okay, so like over at Joann's, or you had your own?
No, independent. We've had several of them in town, and ours was
you were the owner?
One of the earliest ones, yeah.
You were the owner of that shop?
Yeah.
From being a teacher?
Right.
And you've been in the Red River Valley your whole life, you said? Mostly.
I'm definitely Midwestern. My ancestors came from Norway.
Okay. All right.
Most people around here and settled in the Red River Valley on one side of the river or the other. And
yes.
The farthest I ever got away to live was Minot.
Okay.
Well, that's not true. We lived in St. Louis too.
But not for very long. So you're a Midwestern girl.
Definitely.
And you taught. How many years did you teach?
In St. Louis, 2 years, which was interesting. And then here I managed less than 1 year as a substitute teacher.
Okay.
But then, 15, 16 years later, my kids were in school. I had some kids, and they were in school, and I thought, I want to see what they're doing at their schools. Okay. So I went back to being a substitute teacher.
As like an undercover agent.
Sort of.
Almost.
And my daughter said to me, she's such a good girl, straight A student type. She said, Mom, I don't care what they do to me. If you show up in my class to substitute, I'm leaving. But I never did show up in one of her classes.
So you had, oh my goodness, how did I not have this off? We are live radio people, and yes, it happens. Even I can forget to turn things off. So I want to make sure I got the picture here right. You were a teacher in St. Louis. Mm-hmm. You came back to the Midwest. And then for 16 years you raised your family and then became a sub, or what were you doing in those 16 years?
No, I started as a sub and then had the family later. And by then I was already into the retail business, so it was a juggle for a while.
Well, and how did you guys end up starting a retail business is a lot of work. What year was this that you started the retail business?
You would ask, wouldn't you? Let's see, maybe early 80s.
Okay.
So in the early 80s.
Because I love, not everybody who I have on the show is able to tell me about Fargo in the 80s, right?
True.
I was born in 1986. Not to make you feel
you're my
your
son's age. Yeah, okay.
But tell me about Fargo in the 80s and what it was like starting I think a lot of people, Fargo's full of entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
I don't know, has it always been that way?
Probably.
Okay. And but a lot of us are service-oriented entrepreneurs, or we sell a product, but brick and mortar, it's, with the advent of the internet and everything, isn't as popular. What's it like hanging out a brick and mortar shingle in Fargo?
Wipe your mind clean. Forget all about the internet and, stuff like that. I got into quilting with a bang, about the time I got here. It's other quilters out there will understand it it takes over your life.
Okay.
And there was no shop in town that sold fabric for quilters. There were a couple, or even 3 fabric stores around, and they would have 4 bolts of cotton. And quilters like to use cotton. So it wasn't enough.
Yeah.
And I wanted to do it, and mainly it was an idea to do it right.
Okay.
So I started in a small way. My partner was into home dec retailing, so we had a combination shop.
And this is as you're a substitute teacher?
No, I didn't last that long as a substitute.
Okay, so I'm trying to imagine like literally the day-to-day life when you and where you are and what's going on, where you say to yourself, you know what I'm doing isn't what I want to do. What I really want to do is something else. And where that jumping off point comes, because people live their day-to-day life, right?
I love teaching.
Okay.
I really do.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not the same when you you know, one day you're teaching English, one day you're teaching French, one day you're in the music class.
As a sub, yeah.
One day, you hope not, but you're in Fayed. And some of the kids love you, and some of the kids give you a really hard time. So one day I was doing German, which is my field, over at the junior high, and
Sprechen Sie Deutsch?
yeah, ein bisschen, yeah.
Okay.
And one of the kids threw something, a nickel or something, from the back of the room and hit me in the head.
Oh, no.
And that was my last day of substitute
you were like, I'm
teaching.
done with this.
Yeah, I'm done with this. Junior high is hard. You got to be a special person to teach kids that age. You really do.
Yeah, they're like 12, 13. They're all those hormones just kicking in.
They kind
they're
of go
getting
through
wild.
a time of hardly being human, you know. Then they get a little older. In high school, I love it. You can talk to them, and they talk to you mostly.
A little more mature.
Yeah, yeah. So, but when I started the shop, you know, we carried fabric for quilters and notions and things they needed, books and stuff. It was in the early days of the popularity of it. It was coming back from the doldrums, like a lot of old crafts do. Knitting now is a very big craft, which for a time only grandmas did it.
When all of it is Greek to me, so I don't understand any.
You don't have
any
a girlfriend who sits around knitting while you're talking to her?
You know, unfortunately, not.
Okay.
Not even my wife does the knitting. We do have a needle and thread. Sometimes I'll fix a pocket if it rips.
That's good.
So I understand how to put, and I took a home ec class, but I really want to drill down on the inception point. So you get that nickel thrown in your head. You're substitute teaching. Is this how you guys are making ends meet, or is this extra money?
No,
like, what's your family situation
like? It was just
like?
me trying to get back into a teaching position, and it wasn't working, you know.
And it was you and your kids, and so then I would assume
kids, no. My husband and I moved here when he finished medical school.
Okay.
And he moved here to become a resident in family practice.
So your
So
husband
that's
was
a
a
paid
doctor.
position.
Yeah, your
Yeah.
husband was a doctor.
Right.
And so you guys were comfortable. And you
We
said
were doing okay.
Yeah, and so you said to yourself, let's take some of that comfort and throw it away into starting a business.
How did you know that? It was a nice tax deduction, yeah. No, I started without. I had a partner who really knew the retail business. She
Okay.
was great. And so she had a lot of shortcuts and things
Yeah.
that we knew. And we started without borrowing any money.
And how did you know this partner?
That's a good question. I don't remember how I ran into her.
She changed your life forever.
Yeah.
Your entire
yeah.
story is
She
underwritten by your relationship.
She was a businesswoman and a designer and had been for a long time.
Okay.
And she sold real estate and different things.
Sure.
I think it was when,
Those types.
I don't know if you remember Block 6. It's not called Block 6 anymore, but they took this old, it was the DeLandrecies store, a big department store, you know, 4 or 5 floors. And that DeLandrecies had moved out to West Acres
Yes.
several years before.
Which was the edge of town in
It
the 80s.
was. You had to get, it was a dirt road at first.
Yeah. Yes, my mother loves to tell me.
And we had to walk there both ways uphill. No. But they were turning the building then that used to be Herberger's into small shops. They put in a restaurant. There's still a restaurant there in the lower level. There's some offices there and stuff. But at one time, there were quite a few little shops. One shop that became world famous that got its start there was called Nordic Needle.
Okay.
You wouldn't have heard of them either. But until they retired a few years back, anywhere you went in the world and met an embroiderer and told them you were from Fargo, they'd say, "Oh, you have Nordic Needle."
Wow.
Because they just had everything you could need for
Yeah.
any kind of embroidery.
Okay.
And they sold online, you know, well, not mail order.
And this
at
was
first.
before you hung out your shingle.
Oh, yeah. They were
Okay.
there in this teeny little room. And they eventually built their own building on 13th Avenue.
But they weren't good enough. You said to yourself,
No.
I need cotton.
Yeah, right.
Cotton,
they were
cotton,
selling
Egyptian
the thread.
cotton. Right, okay.
We need cotton. We need fabric to
You need
cut up
the fabric.
and sew back together again.
So Joann's didn't exist back then. How do you
Joann's,
compare to Joann's?
I think Joann's might have been here. I'm not sure. We had Mrs. Blow's used to have fabric. They were in the mall with the big fabric store. Besides selling sewing machines, of course, like Blow's still does. And there was Tish Arts that had 2 locations. Even J.C. Penney, I think, the department store when I first moved here, had a fabric department. But already sewing your own clothes was going out of style.
Okay, in the 80s.
Yeah, partly because, or maybe mostly because, everything's being made so cheaply abroad that
Yes.
it's much cheaper to buy than to make it.
See, but the problem is I have a weird body, and so nothing ever fits me right.
Then
So,
you need a tailor.
I need a
yes.
tailor. So you could be a tailor. You have that much skill, that much.
That's the part I do not like, is
Oh, okay.
fitting the body. I sewed my own clothes because it was cheaper, and I was kind of poor, and it
Yeah.
was cheaper to do that, and I knew how. But the clothes have to fit.
Yeah.
But quilts don't have to fit.
Hey.
They're flat.
Yes.
Oh, this is great. I just need to make it big enough, and that's good enough. So
And so for 16 years, you ran your own retail business.
for quite a while, yeah. I had various partners. We shifted location, we shifted name, until my final partner, who was another quilter, and she was great, but she had reached the point where she couldn't compromise anymore. She said, I either need to sell out to you or you need to sell out to me because I want to be in charge. So after some tears, she took over and was in charge and did a great job. And that time we were selling sewing machines too, which is, I tell you what, if you want to go into selling fabric, that's fine. But if you want to make any money, add the sewing machines.
I see. Yeah, it's always about the expanded inventory. Can't just have the one thing.
So
That's why even Casey's is like a Walmart these days, right? I mean,
it's funny how about that.
you
Yeah.
just expand your inventory.
Yeah.
Okay, so 16 years, you got bought out. That was basically your retirement.
Yeah.
And then you've been retired for quite some time.
Well, yeah, except for that short return then to the substitute teaching.
Okay.
But another thing that was happening was once I started the business, then we needed a club because you need to have a fan base. The more people
absolutely.
you can get quilting, the more
Yes.
fabric you sell.
Sure.
So I was one of the founders of the
Yes.
Quilters Guild of North Dakota.
Wow. Okay.
And I'm still a member, even though we've changed our name. Now we are the Fargo Moorhead Quilters.
Okay, but that's different yet, or is that who's connected with the Fiber Arts Festival?
No, they are sponsors, but they're not the ones who started. I
You are
I
a
can
real.
tell you how that happened.
You're a real wheeler and dealer and shaker. You got a lot of connections.
The longer you stay here, the more connections you get, right?
That's how it works.
Although my husband, being in family practice, I swear he knew everybody in town.
Yeah.
And every time
Well,
we'd
everyone
go
gets sick.
out to the grocery store or whatever, they'd say, oh, Dr. Baird, hello. And they'd say, oh, you delivered my baby. Things like that.
Sure.
And I still get it sometimes. They see my name is Baird and they say, oh, you related to Dr. Baird? No, I just married him. Oh, he was my favorite doctor. But he's been retired a long time.
He must have done a good job.
People like him. I've never met anybody who doesn't. That's amazing.
Well, that's great. Well, if they didn't like him, do you think they'd tell you though?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
They tell him they don't like me, so I guess they do the
That's whenever like you're at a shop or something, and you go, "Oh, that looks good on you." It's like, "Would you tell me if it looks bad?"
That's it, right? The classic. Oh, that matches your eyes.
That's a new one to me, but I like
Oh yeah, if somebody's trying something on and you're trying to sell, oh, that matches your eyes.
it. Do people like that? I'm gonna have to use that. I am in a sales position often, so
Ah, well, you're selling to men or women?
I'll have to. Yes.
Actually, it works with both.
Okay. Yeah, everybody likes to be complimented, especially in the year 2024. I mean, all the rules are off. You gotta try both things.
I loved having the shop, and we taught a lot of classes in the shop. So we were always, teaching people to make quilts. But I didn't really like selling things to people. I felt, I'd rather give it away, and you
Yeah.
can't do that. So I was always a little uncomfortable.
When sales, and then we gotta get to our break. But yes. Well, I'm in real estate. So you said your partner was in
that's
real estate,
selling.
and I know those types. Well, it may have been at one point, but certainly it's not anymore. And there is in sales or in being connected to something like that, there seems to be two very different schools. There is like the high pressure ABC, always be closing sales, where like at a department store maybe, or maybe even furniture or cars, right? And then it seems like that's sometimes we get that in real estate where they go from furniture to cars, and then now houses are the big ticket item. But another way of sales is something I think you would appreciate, but it might not work with clothing, but is really more to be just more of an educator, to be a consultant, to build that relationship. And it's like, you know what, you're going to buy something. So I don't need to close you on anything, just as long as you trust me. And building the communities and building the groups like you did and like you have here with the Fiber Arts Festival is kind of part of building that relationship and can drive sales.
Well, we've bought 3 houses, over the years since we moved to here, and dealt with 3 different realtors, and it really is, the first time we knew nothing, so it helped to have somebody who knew what they were saying. And we discovered later that he knew more than we did and didn't tell us everything. But you have to match people with what they need and what they can afford.
Yes.
Yeah, and so it's a big job, isn't it?
It is. Well, and I always tell people, like, I'm not going to close, and that's my tact with it. I'm not going to close you. We're just going to figure out your budget is your budget. We're going to you're spending that money on something. We're going to figure out where you're spending it, what you're getting discounts for, and find the right combination of those two things to spend your budget. And that's what we're going to do, and then we're going to find the right one. And it's not about close down. If you're dealing with a realtor and they feel like a used car salesman, if they're closing you, if you're in the house and like, oh, this is the perfect one, buy now, buy now, buy now, run. Okay. Well, so that's all the real estate we have time for. We are going to take a quick break, and then when we come back, we're going to talk about the event you have coming up. So don't go nowhere.